All right, hi everybody. This is a package management meeting for Nefio on May 9th. And thank you all. We finished a sprint yesterday, starting the next sprint now. So I'd like to take a look at what we've got going. And sorry for the late start there. Let me display. Did we have? I guess I didn't look at the agenda. Did anybody put anything other than sprint? Go there. Yeah, okay, there's no agenda other than sprint check in and start the next sprint. So let me bring up the board and we'll get started. All right. So I think, yeah, it looks like Bala, thank you if you're on the call for rework for setting up the board. And let's take a look at where we are. So Sandeep, I saw you on the call here and I saw your comment, but if you want to say anything about where the status is here.
Yeah, hi. So yeah, so I was able to create the framework as I had documented, and I tested it with one of the old controllers, the initial POC controllers. So now I can add the specializers, but yeah, maybe I missed it. I could not find the controllers, the specializers, but yeah, I saw Wim's comment and I saw the PR, so there are specializers there. But still, I need more information. Maybe Wim, if possible, 5-10 minutes, if we can discuss.
Yeah, that's fine.
And last meeting, you made a comment about config maps. Actually, I didn't get it at that time. So maybe if you could explain that as well, I will incorporate that in the code.
I mean, is that to me, Sandeep, or to
yeah, you I mean, Thursday meeting.
Oh, so it's not a config map, not a config map necessarily. So the thing is that we need to provide. See, the specializers need to interact with the backend, right? And we need to somehow inform them where that backend is located. So we need some configuration parameters. We can do it through an environment variable. So we have multiple ways to do that, but I was just saying is I need one of these things needs to be configurable some way. There's multiple ways we can do that, config map, environment variables, whatever. So yeah, we just have to decide which approach we take, and then because I have in the specializer there is an address field which has to be filled in, basically, and I don't care how it is getting populated. It just someone needs to set it.
So if we did it with an environment variable, the package, the Nefio system package would have, you'd go into the deployment and you'd set it there as an environment variable. That would be fine.
It's one option. I'm not saying that would be one.
Whatever. Yeah, well, we can do it as a config map, or we can do it as a CR that represents our configuration. But I think it's probably easier to just do the environment variable for now, and then we'll see how that works. Right. Part of our goal is part of the philosophy in configuration as data is don't introduce new abstractions if the existing abstractions work, and we know how to change an environment variable in a deployment manifest. So that should be okay to do that.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so I'll do it the environment variable way. Okay, so I'll look into this PR. If I have any questions, I will get back to you on Slack. Otherwise, I'll just try to incorporate these in this management, the manager. Yeah, I'll update. I mean, I'll update tomorrow with whatever progress I make.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Okay, next item is me. This is done. I mean, it's in review. the code's all done. It's in review. I've had a couple reviews and a couple of refinements in that since then. I did decide to skip bothering with conversion webhooks from V1 Alpha 1 to V1 Alpha 2 because we're not really doing anything with it yet. And it's a lot of work actually to get those. Like I actually wrote the conversions, at least for part of the stuff, but like just even setting up the webhooks is a huge pain. And so there's a lot of infrastructure to build for that. So I just skipped it. We don't really need it. But I hope that will merge. I've had a couple of reviews on it, so I hope that will merge within the next couple of days. So.
By the way, I was looking at the code in package variant set. I saw that there's a lot of code for validation, or maybe, but this was V1, right? I didn't look at V2.
There's a lot of code.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is that still because we are not using the regular APIs? Is it still because is this using the aggregated API of ports, or is
no, this is all just regular APIs, but you need to validate the CR that comes in. So Kubernetes CRDs offer certain
a limited set of validation rules. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you're adding, okay, the missing piece. Okay, I see. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's not done with a webhook right now. It's done with the controller does it. So basically there's a condition on the resource that says whether it's valid or not. And if it doesn't pass validation, then it'll show up as invalid. If it were a webhook, it would kick it back at the time of apply, which would be better. But maybe one day we'll do that, but it wasn't critical.
Okay, yeah, that's what I saw. I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry.
Then, so that should be merging soon. Simon reached out on Slack, and it looks like he's going to try and wrap that up tonight or in the next day or so. We sort of got past the last roadblock, so now it's a matter of just execution on some cleanup. So I expect this will merge this week too. This one I also is ready to merge. I never put the. I can. I never. I guess I keep switching tabs and people don't see me switch tabs. This is the package variant set, and then this is. So again, this is under review. It's had a few reviews you can see, and hopefully it will merge soon. So a little later than we hoped, but that's actually all the upstream functionality we needed out of Porch is done now, or will be done very shortly. Will be done this week. So feeling pretty good about that. We should get a new release of Porch then hopefully next week that we can incorporate. All right, next item. Do we have Piotr or Eric? Yeah, I see Piotr. Any comment? You're off mute, but we can't hear you. Not sure why we can't hear you, Piotr. I do know that Piotr's looking for some reviews. So did he maybe put something in chat? Sorry, there's too many windows open. I can't.
No. Yeah, I did review once, but it's my action item to do the second review on Peter's PRC.
Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah. So he's just looking for a review. So let's try and get that merged this week. We'll start really knocking out all of these things. Okay. Yeah, we'll review them, Piotr, and try and get you feedback ASAP. Yeah, I think we should try to merge and iterate, ideally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had asked a couple of questions, which I did not get back to. Yeah, I didn't get back to those PRs after I asked the questions. Probably he might have responded. So I'll go back to them today and see.
I also did the review, but yeah, I'll have a look as well. But,
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah, I looked them over too quickly, but I didn't get it. Yeah. So, okay. Do we have Chandra or Ganesh or Sahir? I don't see them, but they did reach out on here. They've got a package viewer done. And I am in the middle of writing a response to this, but meetings got in the way, so I will reply to him.
Hey, John, I'm not sure whether you share your screen, but you still have the old overview. Okay, just FYI.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I should share this whole window is what I should do probably. So yeah, so the viewer for package variant resource, they have a basic viewer going. There's a couple fields missing, so I'm going to provide a little more detail of what they need. Now, some of these PRs, when they merge, also require changes to that viewer. The only issue there is I think we need to fork the whole UI into Nefio for the Samsung team to contribute. And then maybe once Kept moves to CNCF, we can upstream the changes.
The same CLA thing, John?
Yeah, they haven't signed the Google CLA, and I don't know if there's an issue signing it or it's because it's not a restrictive CLA. It's not really any different than the CNCF one. It's just, because it's not
Going through the legal again. Yeah,
exactly.
that is never quick. I can tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. It isn't here either. Okay, and then installer for Nefio. So Wim, did you want to talk about the presentation that or the work you've been doing? I think you got. Or do we want to finish?
I can share if you want, yeah, because yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So.
Or do you want to go first to the others and then we'll share? Maybe.
I mean, maybe we should finish like because we're trying to plan for the rest of the sprint. Like,
yeah, I think go first through because it could take a bit of time. I think so. If that's okay with you, or
yeah, it's fine with me. So this is all that I mean. The last one. So the reason I brought it up is because it's kind of related to this last one. Have you talked to Victor? I think you said you had spoken with Victor about it some, or did you?
I'm discussing with Victor, but I think it's also important for Vij and Bal, for everybody actually to look at it. The idea is, I think we discussed it, but I did a bit more work on it because I don't have anything else to do.
That's hard to believe with.
Yeah, that's a little hard.
Okay. See, that's the problem. If you're on the plane, you have time to do these types of things.
That's true, right? You can do open source work on there. Like, we're not allowed to do like Google work on the plane because one time, like, somebody saw from somebody's like there was some big leak because of it. So they're like, no, nobody does. But I can do open source work on the plane, right? Yeah.
But okay, let's.
So just one more point before we delve deep. So I created 3 issues for creating 3 packages with which since it is related to installer, I just said that is in the to-do list and the board. That is creating a system package for Nefio, creating a workload package, and creating a package for IPAM backend. So those are 3 separate issues I created as we discussed the other time, the other meeting last week. So what I meant to say is, since this is related, I just wanted to keep that in mind when Wim is presenting his ideas. Please.
Okay, yeah. So I think some of these may be covered already in some of the things he's doing. So
yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's not by the way, what I'm presenting is in line with what we discussed. Is just I started implementing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, is Stephen here? I don't see him. Okay, I have a one-to-one with him later today, but actually, I'm not sure I can make it. So hopefully, I'll try to catch up with him on topology controller. I know he had a PR out there, but I haven't. I did have a that maybe we should discuss here, even though he's not here. So I think he submitted the PR to the API directory for the topology controller APIs.
Yep.
And
I
was
reviewed that.
wondering. Well, no. What I was wondering is, do we want, what I was imagining, sort of this topology controller, like if we think about layering, right? Like everything in the API directory, API repository right now is about, are these CRs and CRDs that we can use. They're kind of like, we use them within packages to express our requirements, and we use them to fulfill those requirements. I guess it's fine. I'm just trying to think about like where the topology controller is in essence a higher level controller that consumes all of these things. I'm imagining we'll have many of these, but I guess it's part of the API surface of Nefio. So I guess it belongs there. I was just trying to figure out, like, does it belong just in its own controller directory with that controller, or does it belong as a public API of Nefio? And right, like,
yeah, that's always
is the purpose of this topology controller to demonstrate the type of controller you could build with Nefio, or is it intended to be part of the surface area of Nefio for general consumption? I guess it's fine, like for it to be the latter. I don't know that we had talked about it, and I was curious of others' opinions. But maybe we need that in the bigger meeting, not here.
Yeah, maybe we can discuss that tomorrow or something like that.
Yeah, and tomorrow we have other topics too, so slightly bigger scope. I will add some agenda items for tomorrow's meeting, John.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine. Okay, cool. Then, oh, this one also goes in here. Okay. So this one's underway as an epic. How are we? Did we decide how do we schedule the epics into in progress, or do we?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, to me, I mean, the way at least we know it's an epic. That's how I distinguished it. I don't think we decided anything.
Okay.
Scheduling, we can put it actually in the to-do. Probably
Yeah.
now I look at it, I mean, probably not now. After this, I can ask whether it's useful at all to group work that way, the way I'm doing. I thought it was useful, but if it is not useful, then probably should not do it.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It seems there's some utility to the idea of like, we're trying to deliver this big piece of functionality, and what are all the components that go into that? So that does seem useful, right?
At least it was useful for one of the items that me and Ravi were working on. But the thing is there a way to connect it, just like how we use Jira? I'm not sure, Bala, whether it is easy to be able to, like, if I were to click on a certain epic, I would be able to see the list of all the associated.
Yes, that you will do. Yes. Yes, that is, you will do.
It's not as good as some of the other tools I've used in the past for this, but it's here.
But it is better to group it. I mean, I would prefer that way. Otherwise,
okay, thanks, Vish. Then probably you should keep it there.
Okay, I think that's our items. I do think. Are there any other things that we're missing in order to? Oh, the thing I wanted to raise is Bala had raised in SIG Release. Was it yesterday? I don't know. I wasn't there. So the idea of, hey, I think we might need an extra sprint or so. So I did raise that with Kandan, and he's going to talk to it's going to be an agenda item on the TSC on Thursday. I mean, what are they going to say? Like, no, what are they going to deliver instead? But I think that's wise. I do think that, we're making progress, but I think a little extra time to tighten things up after this sprint, because otherwise, basically, it's this sprint and then 1 week and we're released. So the idea would be, instead, it's this sprint, we're code complete at the end of this sprint. We have a week to kind of do extra collateral, like docs, and we have a sprint to do that, docs and integration testing and bug fixes. And then we try to release at that point, or we have an extra week or whatever it was we said. The discussion will be on Thursday with the TSC, but I think that's wise. Somebody has a hand up.
It's me. So I did see some communication on LinkedIn from Nefio channel saying that Nefio release 1 will be available in June. So it seems like it was well that way, it was well accounted for.
But it's normal, right?
Well, keeping it as June, which means we get enough time. So anyway, wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, we always sort of were like, well, we're targeting the end of May because it's really hard. It's hard enough to manage these things in a company where you can tell people what to do. In an open source project, it's like people are volunteering their time, and if something comes up that they have to do for their day job or whatever, even if this is part of their day job, there might be more important things from their company's point of view that they have to do. So
also the first release is always tricky.
Yes.
So I think it's wise to have that extra cushion of 1 or 2 weeks, so that we can output a very quality first release.
Yeah. So Anne.
Do we have some place where we communicate what's in R1 to the public?
So this is a very good question.
We know what's in R1, but okay.
We will. So part of our thing with the TSC is we have to sort of present that kind of thing. And there's going to be a bunch of communications we have to do around that. In fact, this is something I would like to do. I reflected this I think in the docs repo somewhere, is a series of short presentations and videos, sort of, talking about all the different topics. I have a blog or an outline of things I want to talk about in R1 as far as capabilities demonstration, but it's focused very much on like this sub-project and maybe the special package specialization sub-project. But I think there's a lot of other work going on in other areas that we would want to highlight. And so we do want to do a bunch of comms about that. So anybody who's interested in helping with that, let me know. I want to try to, there's 2 aspects of it. One is what you brought up, and like what's in R1, talk about R1. But there's another one that's just like even going back further of like, why are we doing this? What's the broader roadmap? What are the main themes? What are the main differences? And I want to produce a bunch of presentations and videos for that, and blog posts. You can sort of think of like one topic as having a presentation deck, a short video presenting that, and a blog to go along with it, and then links to collateral. And I'm willing to do some of these myself, but I think it would be really cool if we had a bunch of people from the community do different ones. That would really be, show the community effort involved. But it is a time commitment, but in the month of June, I'm kind of thinking about doing a lot of that.
Yeah, but the reason I ask is because some of the companies I'm talking to, interviewing with, are asking me like, is R1 available? Once it is available, is it usable as something as foundational code base for them? And I'm like, I don't know.
I mean, we're still like putting on my like long-term hat. I still think of us as in prototyping mode, like not prototyping, maybe a little bit better than prototyping, but not much, right? This is early code. We're demonstrating concepts, ideas, capabilities, and there will be products like, we'll be taking pieces of this and making it, I think we've announced a certain product around it, right? So we'll be doing that. But it's going to still evolve significantly, I would say. So I don't know, like that sort of depends on the risk tolerance and what the company's trying to do. But I think it's going
my answer was, sorry. my answer was it's too preliminary, in my opinion, right now to be used as a foundation. So the follow-up question then is, when do you think it'll be ready? So
Right.
I'm getting these from during interview, so it's not really, you know.
I mean, like, it kind of all depends on us, right? Like, we have to
Yeah.
decide what is going to go into R2. TSC has to weigh in on that. SIG 1, SIG 2, SIG 3, I'll have to work together to figure out, like, what do we consider an MVP scope for something that, you know, could be really useful. I think that we actually have some of that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing product, right? I think we do have MVP scope for a number of components or areas. Obviously, we're doing more on top of what we have here in order to make product. So, you know, but we have, yeah, that's I guess where I stop talking.
Okay. No, I mean, I didn't have the answer, so I thought I'd bring it back.
No, it's a good question, and I don't know that any of us has the answer, right? Like, it's when was Kubernetes ready to be a product? You know, like, I don't know. Like, it all depends on the level of support that the company producing the product is willing to invest in making it work for their customers.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Should I present the thing? All right. So, okay, I don't know how long this will take. Do you see my screen? I'll put it in. So, I don't think it's anything new, but because I think in the last meetings we basically said is, okay, let's consume Nephew for Nephew, right? So rather than building our own installation tools and what have you, the idea is let's use packages and let's see what we are missing in order to make Nephew deployable through itself, right? So I started to look at that a little bit, and I had discussed with John and then Victor, and started to discuss with I. So the idea is to present and get some more feedback. But the idea is, let's. So the first thing that we need to do, so it's not completely off, but the idea is also to minimize as much as possible anything that we need outside, right? And so we still need a VM, or this could also be a container in my view eventually, but let's focus on the VM where we install a set of tools, like the ones that we have right now or need right now is kind, kubectl, and kept, right? And we need to create still a cluster to bootstrap it upon. So that's still a step that we have to take. You see here that we have, so this is something that Victor did, is we are using extra mounts. And the reason at the moment, the way that we are approaching is because you'll see that we bootstrap clusters from this cluster. We need somehow a CNI information there. And so what we did here is that we mount the CNI from the main VM. And as such, we make it available towards cluster API. So that's an approach that we took right now to do that. But okay, that's probably too detailed at the moment to go through, but it's aligned with what Victor did in his install script, basically. Okay. Yeah, John.
So these first two bullets are assuming you're not just bringing your own cluster. If we were to bring our own cluster, like if I were to go and create a GKE cluster and say that's going to be my management cluster, I could skip these first two bullets, right?
You still need kubectl and kept, basically, right? Somewhere.
Sure. On my workstation, I need kubectl and kept.
Yeah. So what you don't need is the kind, and you don't need the step number 2. So the kind installation you don't need, and bullet number 2 you also don't need because you have your cluster already, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So from after bullet number 2, everything becomes Nephew. There is nothing else that we should be doing, right? And I basically gave 2 options. So one option is we install, so we need a namespace, we need ports. Okay, at the moment I'm working on Gitea, Giti or Gitea, I don't know how to spell it properly, but
I think they pronounce it Giti, but I think you're right. To me, it looks like Gitea unless there were two T's, but that's,
yeah, Giti, okay, whatever.
I think
So,
Giti is how they say
yeah,
it.
I created a package, by the way, for this already, right? Yeah, and at the moment I deploy it within the cluster that you see here, right? So that's the approach. Now, it also means that if you do so, that means that the workload clusters going forward needs, so the config sync that runs on there needs to be able to access that Giti from the management cluster. So there is something, let's say, internal configuration to be done there to do so. But yeah, John.
So Giti would be part of the, like, going back to there being two sort of types of Mafio installations. One is a sandbox installation for kicking the tires.
Yeah.
And the other is, oh, I want to install this to really use it in a production or production-like environment. In that latter case, really we need, it could be, people may choose a different Git provider.
Correct.
So in that case, we wouldn't be installing Git. So in that sense, it probably should be a separate package.
Yes.
You just need it for bootstrapping right now.
Correct. So, and it's a package. So that's what I'm providing. So I have that already. I created that.
Okay.
I have not merged.
Okay.
So there is a package with Giti, and so you just install it like kept live apply Giti, and you get a running Giti in your management cluster. Okay. So that's what I did. Then for cluster API, so at the moment, but again, here it's the same remark as with Giti. So if you don't want cluster API, you want something else, you could rip and replace it, right? At the moment, I haven't created a package for it yet. So if people would like to help, that would be very much appreciated. So I asked also Victor to do so. At the moment, I use cluster CTL to install it, which means that it's a dependency here as well. But okay, the idea is that this is a package. So in the approach that I'm taking, this also is a package. Okay. Then this is the package that we are already doing. So this is our operator, right? Where we have EdgeWatcher, the specializer. And then, okay, you see here two new controllers, which I'll explain into a bit. What those controllers will do is, I have a slide particularly on it. So I created them already. One is there to create repos based on clusters. And the second one is it basically installs config sync on a bootstrap cluster once that cluster becomes available, in order to ensure that we have that the cluster, when it's deployed, has config sync. So from there onwards, everything goes automatic. Okay. So these are two controllers that actually I've built already. And I'll explain how they exactly work. Then there is the resource backend, which we have. So that's also a package. Config sync is a package. There will be a repository CR, because so this repository CR will be taken by this repo controller to create let's say a repo for the management cluster, because you'll see that once we deploy clusters, the cluster API uses, so we apply them to the management cluster, such that cluster API then provisions a real cluster, right? So as such, the proposal here is to also create a repo on the management cluster, which uses config sync to sync that towards ports, and then applies so config sync syncs it to let's say apply that configuration towards the management cluster, and as such, that's how clusters get created, and so on and so forth. Okay. So that's one. The other, I created a separate option. So Bala, let me first finish. A separate option where components that you pre-install is less, right? So the kept live apply is a little bit less, and you register. So because we already discussed, some people want Gitty, some people want something else, some people don't want cluster API. So the other approach, which is a slight variation of the first one, is that we allow, so we basically put some of these packages as as blueprint options for people to pick and choose. And then what would happen here is that they would go into that management repo, which is created here. And config sync basically applies them to the cluster. So it's a small, slight variation, but it allows you to have a bit more flexibility if people want that. But yeah, okay. So that's the difference between option 1 and option 2. But yeah, Bala, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Wim. Thanks for doing this and the presentation. So when it comes to the packages, right, if you go to this step, the previous slide, I was wondering if we can organize the packages in the way that we actually discussed, like one for the workload cluster, one for the management cluster. The management cluster would have all the controllers, which is embedded in a controller manager, the porch, config sync, and the yeah, those were pretty much the things for the. So if we are, so basically we discussed like Nefio system package, Nefio workload cluster package, and IPAM backend package. And in addition to that, the other things that you said here, right, the opinionated thing. So you can call it like an operator or something. So can we organize the packages in that way?
For sure, yeah, 100%. That's what I
want. So that we could use it either here or any other installation.
Yeah, correct. So that's the idea. So what you see here from what you have discussed so far, the two new items that you see on this list is Gitty and Cluster API. They are somehow, so they are management side packages, management cluster side packages, but not part of system Nefio.
Oh, right. So system Nefio, we were thinking of creating a single package that includes specializers, config sync, porch, everything together. That's where my question is, because here they are listed as separate packages.
Yeah, but I would create them as a sub package in a main package or something.
Got it. Okay.
So that's what I would do, and then you would install Nefio system, right? But I would not include those two into that. I would because this will be swapped or changed depending on what you want to do. Whereas these are really Nefio related pieces, right?
Got it. Yes, that makes sense. Okay, cool. We are on the same page. Thanks, Wim.
Yeah. I didn't really focus on the organization of it so far, but just the general principle. But so after this step is done, what you have, or what we should have, is we should have a kind cluster. Porch is running into it. There's a management repo already associated with Porch. And there is some blueprint repos that have a bunch of things in here. And these are some software components that run into the kind cluster. Okay. So nothing new, I think, except that you see that within the Nefio operator, there is 2 additional controllers that are running there. Okay. Now, what will happen? So let's say we now create a new cluster. Okay. So what we are suggesting here is we create a blueprint package. What does the blueprint package contain? It contains cluster CRs, which are basically the cluster API ones. I built a package that does this already. And that's John. Maybe we should, this could also be a package variant, which references upstream that blueprint package, if you will. And downstream will then be applied to that management cluster, if you will. So
we can talk about that. That's not a bad idea, because then we could swap out which type of cluster just by changing.
I agree. So that's why I think I prefer that personally, because that helps. Indeed, like you said, it helps to gain more flexibility.
Yeah.
Then we have a repo CR. So this is the CR that will be used by the repo controller eventually when this package gets applied. We have a porch repository. So that is the CR to create the URL for ports to link it to this repo that will be created. And then we have a package variant config sync. So this is a package variant that upstream ties to the config sync package, and downstream is referencing the management repo package, and it needs to basically resolve the root sync to be specific for that that cluster. So that's what this package variant config sync will do. It will be picked up by the package variant controller, which will then put that package with the necessary variation inside of that management repo. So we create this.
One second there, just to make sure I understand. So far, we pulled on this cluster blueprint package, and we apply it, or we can use ports to apply it to our management cluster.
Yeah, so that's this step. Yeah, so that's what's happening here. Yeah,
that's what the operator does there, right? And then that in turn creates new clones packages within the and creates new packages again within the management cluster.
Yes.
So far, we haven't written anything to a workload cluster repo, but one of the things that will happen, well, I'll let you. I think that's, and you create that workload cluster repo as part of this, right?
Yeah. So what is happening is this, right? So this is our blueprint, if you will, right? So in this blueprint, there is a cluster. There's a set. It's not a single CR. So this cluster API typically is a bunch of YAML, right? That represents a cluster. Okay. So that's why I'm proposing to build. I make that an upstream, and then this package variant piece will then do that, right? But what will actually happen is when the operator wants a new workload cluster, he creates a package variant. So probably it will be a UI thing, I'm assuming, right? That says,
or he can directly clone it at that point, right?
Yeah, clone it directly, whatever. So we reference this blueprint that you saw here, right? And you say deploy this on that management repo, and it somehow has a reference to a cluster name one way or another, right? That's what I'm assuming. Once this package variant does that, so what actually happens is it will create another package variant for this cluster to be actuated, as well as this config sync. So what will actually happen in that management repo, we create a bunch of CRs, which is this repo CR, this Porsche repository CR, as well as the cluster CR that gets actuated onto the management cluster. And what will happen is that this one goes straight in, right? Without anyone picking it up, because port is taking that in. This one is going to be used by the repo controller, which is creating a repo in Git. It creates an access token, and it creates a secret that is being referenced by this port repository, right? And then the cluster CRs are being picked up by the cluster API, which is going to basically bootstrap a cluster based on the information over there. And the last step is that once this cluster gets into ready state, the bootstrap controller picks up that and then installs config sync on that cluster based on that package variant that you have applied over there. Does that make sense? Or
makes sense to me, yeah. Yeah, so you created a config sync workload cluster config sync variant for that specific cluster.
Correct.
And you store that in the management repo, and then you reference it. The bootstrap controller can reference it and access it.
Yes.
And apply it
to the cluster, to the workload
cluster itself.
Yeah.
And that points to the new repository that was created that's specific to that workload cluster.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
So what does the repo controller? Yeah, Fish.
So this new cluster is getting created. Placement of it. Is it going to be on, are we providing, like, I want this, I'm just asking it in a generic way. I want this created on AWS. I want this created on GCP, or I am pointing you to this particular VM IP address. I want you to go create on this, or I'm pointing you to bare metal. So
Okay, at the moment, Vish, I focused on Docker. I am kind with Victor, right? So at the moment, I focused on that. But I do know that with Cluster API, so if you install the provide, so you
the providers, okay.
Yeah, so the way it works is, and that's why I said this, I did not focus at the moment on this Cluster API, because the way you install the basics and then you install providers, right? So I have been focused on the Docker provider, which is the thing that allows you to install kind clusters. But you could install GCP provider, AWS provider, other providers if you want, right? And that's why I'm saying this package should be flexible and customizable. And then based on the region and the API, so you need some keys here that this will reference. Based on those information, you will create a cluster in region X, region Y, and blah, blah, blah.
So basically, anything that the cluster API supports underneath,
we can support.
We support that. That is the statement. That is my
there is
takeaway
one,
for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There is one thing is that if you go to the public cloud, you need some credentials. So that part we still need to figure out somehow. But the whole principle that you see here can work on public cloud. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can work with things other than cluster API, right? So like you could swap out, we have something called KCC that allows you to create not only clusters, but other cloud resources.
Yep.
And so often you need other cloud resources along with your cluster. You can put those all in the same package, and those could all get provisioned at the same time. Or AWS has a similar thing. Like every cloud provider has a similar thing. So we can support any of those and all of them. In fact, we don't need to pick one. We can actually do them all as long as we can build our resources to differentiate, or our packages to differentiate.
Yeah. There's a few variations probably that we need to do. So for example, the Bootstrap controller, I mean, if you look to how it works, it watches the cluster readiness and it uses the cluster API
That's going to need
to do so. So there's a small variation that we need to do, but it's very small. I mean, it would be very easy to, I mean, you have to look at how to do multiple variants and stuff like that. But so the idea right now is to focus on kind clusters initially, but I think the infrastructure is easily adoptable to multiple instantiations.
Yeah.
So thanks, Wim. So for example, this is a question to both Wim and John. Say for example, tomorrow we have to support, say, O2 IMS interface for infrastructure automation, essentially cluster creation. So we would think this will be that in that package, maybe we'll write a controller or a shim layer that satisfies that particular API, and then package that.
The way to do it for a new cluster, let's say OpenShift, right? So you will have an API, I'm assuming, right? So there we make an OpenShift package.
I think that Bala's question was different. So if we as an FU wanted to support those APIs northbound, then what we would do is build, like you said, a shim. So in fact, if you go back to the old diagrams from like the launch, you'll see, I think there's a box in there that says like, telco API. I don't remember the name of it. Sorry, it's like one of the organizations. Like the idea right there is exactly right. Those would present northbound standard APIs, telco standards APIs, and then southbound would be this, right? Southbound, that little box would instantiate package A, or create a package variant. Actually, all I would have to do would be similar. Instantiate package A, and maybe run through some automated approvals. And right, we've got there's a lot of processing that has to be done, but right on the point, Bala, I think. Did I understand your question correctly?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And then Wim, you were also saying something specific. I just want to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, we could build, let's say, an OpenShift cluster, right, with an API here, for example, right? That's a package for OpenShift or whatever other flavor that we have, and then we have to do one slight modification onto this guy here to look at what to watch for to understand what the cluster readiness is for that particular implementation, but the rest, what happens below here is generic because we rely on package variants and downstream info. to do that lookup. So there is only a very small thing that we have to do, and we probably have to see how we build that software in such a way that we can easily extend or support multiple things.
Basically we need a Kubernetes endpoint and credentials.
Yeah, that's it.
And so if we build a little adapter that for any provider can spit those two at us, we're basically done, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, cool. So basically, we just discussed both southbound and northbound interfaces. Yeah, cool. Nice. Yeah.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, so basically, and then, okay, the net result of this, so once this happened, is basically we have a new repo that we created automatically, right? We have a new workload cluster that is deployed somewhere. And then we have config sync deployed, which basically is associated with this workload cluster repo. And what it actually means, which is that a bunch of our scripts and stuff like that become obsolete by Nephew, right?
Yeah, definitely. Once it is working and proves to be stable, right? I mean, it's more like we evolve. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the current status of affairs is that this guy is actually ready. This guy is more or less ready. I have to do one slight change for the package variant, but it's more or less ready. And all the rest is basically creating packages.
So we have 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
So if there's any questions, that'd be awesome. But I do want to say, should we make this a goal for this sprint? Like, this was originally a stretch goal, but it seems like we're very close. How do people see their capacity with respect to the things we've already got scheduled and the installer pieces that we've already talked about, with this being the implementation? Do we, other questions about whether we should do that or not? Any thoughts?
I mean, my initial thought would be there's already so much of content that has gone in that people need to digest. See, you have to look at it two ways. I look at it as, hey, John and Wim know what they're doing in general. They are in their thoughts and in their understanding of some of these things, they are far ahead. But there are other concepts within Nephew also that people need to come to speed. It shouldn't so happen that we do R1 and then people go off and spend 6 weeks to understand what R1 was all about, right? And usually that's what happens. It's the mind, and of course we can all go do this, and we can do these things, but there are folks wanting to understand what is happening. They want to go look at the PRs and all this stuff. So we need to give that time to digest. That's what I would say. That is my personal opinion. So. Yeah,
I think that actually gets back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I do want to produce a bunch of things that try to help people digest it. That the kind of counter to that, like, one of the core things we've talked about is using the same machinery to automate infra and workload. And so I actually think personally that this will make it easier to demonstrate more of how the concepts work on a horizontal basis, as opposed to people narrowly focusing in on, are we deploying free 5GC? If they can see, oh, you're using exactly the same package structure, package concepts, specialization concepts to deploy that cluster. Oh, and then you can just do the same thing again, and it deploys a workload across those clusters. But that's
I'm with John. I mean, so I think the message here, so for me, I'm not trying to sell, but just I try to make people think, is the fact that we are using the same principles for different use case. Because for me, this is just installing infra, which is completely different than free 5GC installation. The fact that we can do that and demonstrate that, for me, is a very powerful message for our one at the field. So, and that's why I wanted to prove that we could do it. So I and even after KubeCon, for me, it was clear that this is the thing. For Nephew, the whole piece to consume this thing by yourself, and if we can be very quick to do new use cases and show that the principles that are here are solid and can be applied very quickly to other use cases, it's for me, it's a very powerful thing for Nephew.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
I agree with that, because in terms of demonstrating the principles of Nephew, this is a big endorsement that what you should, because it is, yeah, basically it also covers our swim lane 1 a little bit as well. So we can say we are demonstrating swim lane 1. It's also good time, good.
Okay, folks, we
Negotiating
are out of time.
the TSC for the TSC. No, we are not just asking for time, we are giving you extra.
But maybe
Exactly.
if you are interested in
I
it,
have to go, guys. I'm sorry, I'm getting kicked out of the room here. Somebody else has a book, but why don't we follow up on Slack? Sorry to cut it off, but
Cool.
thanks all.
Thank you. Have a good one.